Good afternoon, and welcome to this virtual town hall meeting for College of Charleston students and families. I'm Mike Robertson, Senior Director of Media Relations, and I'll be moderating today's event off camera. I'm joined by President Andrew Hsu and the college's COVID-19 leadership team, all of whom are participating remotely from separate locations. Believe it or not, this is our 13th round of virtual town hall meetings, and whether this is your very first one or you've joined us for some previous town halls, we appreciate you taking the time to participate. Today's event will last about 45 minutes. We'll start with opening remarks from President Hsu, followed by opening remarks from Alicia Cadell, who's the Executive Vice President of Student Affairs, and then we'll get to your questions. As always, you can submit your questions live using the Q&A window at the top right of your screen. I will read each selected question out loud, and the appropriate presenter or presenters will respond. Selected questions will appear in the Q&A window and also on your main screen. We want these town halls to be conversational, so we're asking our presenters to maybe follow up some questions from one of others. If we don't read your question live during today's event, our presenters will still try to answer you directly through the chat. We will also read a couple of the questions that were submitted in advance to the college's COVID-19 email address or through social media. Now, you're of course welcome to submit your questions via email at any time. That address is covid19@cfc.edu. And with that, I turn it over to President Hsu for some opening remarks. President Hsu.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to be here with you all today. For those of you back on campus now, you have seen a hint of what was once normal with our classmates and your professors making their way to and from class. I will be honest, it's so great to see people again, even if everyone is wearing a face covering. There's a renewed spirit on campus as more people come and go. I hope you feel that energy too. While technology has allowed many of us to accomplish so much during this pandemic, in-person interaction is still vital to the long-term health and well-being of a university and its greater community. So in this moment, as we start coming back together, as our energy is finally returning, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to all of our students and our families. On March 12th, 6 months ago, I made the initial announcement that we would be suspending in-person instructions after spring break. And then, of course, that 1-week suspension was soon extended through the spring semester, then into the summer months, and then again into the first 3 weeks of this fall semester. In 2020, we all seem to be living in dog years. And these past 6 months certainly seem like years and maybe even decades. But during these very strange times, our campus never stopped and it never wavered. I want to thank you, our students and families, for your flexibility and your creativity in adapting to these quick turn pivots in our instruction. I know this has not been easy, to say the least, and thank you, and thank you. But our work, as you know, is not complete, not even close. Each and every day, we have to remain vigilant. We have to keep our collective guard up. And we must follow closely and without fail our health and safety protocols on campus. I implore you to wear your face coverings on campus, practice social distancing, limit the number of people with whom you come into direct contact, wash your hands frequently, and do your best to be kind, forgiving, and helpful in all circumstances. Remember, face coverings and social distancing are the best preventative efforts that we have while we still don't have a vaccine. And please encourage your classmates, our visitors, or anyone you see on campus to wear face coverings, both inside and outside when they are at the college and off campus too, if you can. We're all in this together. We have a duty to each other to remind our campus community to wear face coverings. It can be as simple as pointing to your own face mask if you see someone without one, or you can do what I and some of our senior leadership team members did, to simply hand them a face covering and see if they needed more. And if you yourself needed more, you can always pick some new ones from the Stern Center. If we all do that, we greatly improve our chances to keep our in-person and hybrid instruction plans through Thanksgiving break. I know we can do it. And with that, I will turn things over to Dr. Alicia Cadell, our Executive Vice President of Student Affairs, who will take you through some of the process that we're going through and talk to you a little bit about the Cougar Pledge, about our gathering policies, as well as some possible activities for this weekend. Alicia?
Thank you, President Hsu, and hello, everyone. I want to offer the warmest welcome to students. It's so great to have you back on campus, and while it's different, you are definitely the heart and the life of this campus, and that has not changed. So I'm really glad to see you back and really appreciate all that you're doing to wear your face coverings and stay distant and engage in your classes. And certainly to our newest students, we realize for many of you, you may be on campus for the first time, or maybe you haven't been here for a while. So I'm going to talk for just a minute about some of the ways you can connect. And I'm also reminded over these past couple of days of why we ask you to buy rain boots when you come to Charleston. So I hope you all have your rain boots for these couple of days. So I know that I see some questions on here which we'll talk about getting connected. For our residential students, one thing that's really important for you if you're living on campus is to check and watch your email. That's how your RAs are going to be communicating with you. You should have already heard from them 2 or 3 times. And then they're also working on socials, both virtually and in person, for you to connect. So keep watching for that information. If you don't know or can't find it, please reach out to your RA, or if you can't find them, let me know and we'll make sure you can get connected with them. Next week, they'll be starting a lot of informal Cougar chats and doing some different activities to help find out what you're interested in. And also, if you're not already following it, following Cougar Connect events is really important. That's where all of our Week of Welcome activities are. We have activities Friday and Saturday of this weekend. So some great ways for you to get connected to other students. Many of those are virtual, but there are some in-person outdoor activity options as well. And our fitness centers are up and running. So that's a good way for you to get out and get some exercise on campus. We also want to make sure that you are connecting with our resources on campus. As President Hsu mentioned, the Stern Center will have face coverings if you need them, and it will be open this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, from 12 noon to 8 p.m. So that's a place you can come and meet some other students. It's set up really well for social distancing, so that's a nice place for you to be. And so it's a weekend coming up soon, and we want you to think carefully and make good choices about this weekend. We want you to look at being places that are following COVID rules really well. If those events aren't connected formally with the campus, weekend activities and behaviors are really important to do in a healthy way. And speaking of that, when I've been talking with students and I asked our student input group for some feedback about what they're experiencing, you've all been sharing that you're really pleased with how classes are going and your transition back on campus. But a lot of students have shared that you're very concerned about some of the social gatherings still happening off campus. So just a reminder, any non-official college function that has 10 or more people, that has more than 10 people, is a violation of our COVID policies. And that could result in an immediate interim suspension. And if you're found in violation of hosting or attending one of those parties, you will be suspended for the fall semester. So it's really important that you keep your off-campus gatherings small, that you, even when you're gathering, it's still very, very good to wear your face coverings and stay socially distanced, even when you're in smaller groups of students. We've been really partnering with the city, and they have created mechanisms to help the local police and our campus police look into these events as they're reported. So we're continuing to enhance how we do that. So complying with that policy is really, really important. The other thing I would mention is these, as President Hsu mentioned, are all laid out in the Cougar Pledge. So if you haven't looked at that recently, or if you haven't read it and agreed to it, please take a look at that, because it will give you the good guidelines of what we're all trying to do to keep our campus safe. And one more special thing, tomorrow evening from 6 to 8 p.m., watch your social media, because President Hsu and I will be out finding you, following our COVID policies, meeting you, and we'll have some special treats for you. And when you see his social media postings announcing this event, they're also very clever. So be watching for that tomorrow. And we want to find you tomorrow evening, get a chance to say hello, and also find you following the COVID policy. So watch for that tomorrow night. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alicia. You mentioned earlier about RAs, which brings us to our first question. Are the RAs encouraged to facilitate meetings and activities so that students can get to know each other on their halls? My freshman in Liberty feels very isolated, although she has tried to find and meet people around her. I know the RAs are students themselves, but arranging live and in-person activities outside certainly could be beneficial to freshmen who do not know anyone else.
For sure. And thank you for this question. Yes, the RAs have been asked to do, they have criteria as part of their positions for outreach to students, both individual and then also doing small group gatherings. So have your student please watch for that carefully, but also to reach out to the RA when they're feeling isolated, so the RA can maybe help them think of some ways that they may not be familiar with to find those connections. So you'll see those activities start to increase as we get more settled over these next couple of weeks. And if your student is looking for other things to do, following Cougar Connect events and looking at student life events is also really beneficial. But we should continue to see our RAs reaching out, and if students aren't getting that in the time that they need it, please have them connect with the RA to make sure we're getting them what they need.
Great. Our next question deals with refunds. When will refunds for housing and dining for the first 3 weeks of school be posted? Amy?
Now that students are moved in and we're past the deadline for making changes to your meal plans, we are in the process of sending those refunds over to the treasurer's office, and they should all be posted to the e-bills no later than October 1st.
All right, thank you, Amy. Let's go to our next question here. Our students' dorm suite has not really been cleaned upon move-in, and there is still no housing provided microwave in place. My question is, why weren't the dorms cleaned properly in the 6 months that they were not occupied?
Mike, this is John Morris, Vice President for Facilities Management, and I'll try to see if I can help with that answer a little bit. If we think about what really was happening right after spring break, people didn't return, but they left all their possessions, and so most of the residence halls had all their possessions in there well into late May, when the South Carolina students were able to come and get their possessions, and then further even into the summer when the out-of-state students were able to come and get their possessions. So early on, we were trying to get out perishables, things that trash, things that would really make a huge mess for us. And then as things started to spike in the middle of the summer, we had reduced workforce because they were out on approved leave. So it appears, I mean, the individuals were not in the res halls for 6 months, but the res halls weren't really accessible for our facility staff through those full 6 months.
All right, thank you. Like we said earlier, if you have questions, you can submit them to covid19@cfc.edu. We'll get to one of those questions in just a second. Let's go to this one now. My son's instructor wants students to attend one class each week in person, even though students speak Spanish virtually during the virtual classes. This causes other problems since he has classes before and after the in-person class. This is the only class he is required to take in person. Why is he concerned? Well, he is concerned about COVID-19, as am I. Why must he attend this class in person?
So this is Suzanne Austin, Provost. Each faculty member has scheduled and is running their classes according to the syllabus. I think that if your son is especially concerned about having to attend the class in person once a week, he should just speak to the faculty member. We've been asking faculty members all along to be especially thoughtful about how they deal with student requests for accommodation. I would see this as a student request for accommodation. So I think given that the class has already started, that the best thing to do would be just to approach the faculty member and let them know that your student is uncomfortable with attending class once a week.
All right, let's go to that covid19@cfc.edu question that we received. It's checking the forecast before we came to this town hall meeting. They're saying next week it's supposed to be highs in the low to mid 70s, so it's going to be beautiful, which brings up this question. When and where can I eat on campus? Can I sit outside, Rivers Green, Cistern Yard, places like that, and eat without a mask on?
Hey, Mike, this is Amy. I'm happy to start off with this, and if anyone else wants to chime in, they can do so. So yes, you can eat outside on campus at Rivers Green, any of the outdoor locations. We just ask that people be mindful of others around them and make sure that they're socially distanced so that everyone stays safe. And as long as you're actively eating and drinking, it's okay to take your mask off. But when you're not doing that, we ask that you put it back on. Thank you.
Alicia, you want to add anything to that?
I think Amy covered it. I think the important part is, you need to be actively eating or drinking, and it would be safer if you're seated even while you're drinking instead of kind of walking with your face covering off and drinking. So I know these are all really hard changes to make, but we'd like you to be distant and actively eating or drinking and kind of in your own space, as Amy said.
All right, let's go ahead and go to our next question. My son is finding the online platform very challenging, especially his statistics class. He's been reaching out to his professor and trying to catch up. Are professors meeting with students in person? He learns so much better that way.
Suzanne Austin here. So some of our faculty members have requested and received accommodation because they have health-related issues. I don't know what is the situation with this particular class. Some faculty members are meeting with students in person and some have accommodations and they are not. I understand your point about your child's learning style. I would say that he should continue to work with the faculty member. And the other opportunity as well is that we have tutoring services and supplemental instruction that are also available to your son. That could be very helpful with the statistics class, and I would urge him to take advantage of those as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. Next question, will refunds for parking passes be refunded for the first 3 weeks of virtual classes?
Hey, Mike, this is Amy again. Yes, parking fees will be prorated for that period of time. There will be an exception. There were a handful of students who did require parking starting on the first day of class. So those students who had permits that were activated at that time will not be refunded, but the majority of students will be refunded for that period since their permits did not begin effective until September 14th.
All right, next question concerns the COVID dashboard. How does the COVID dashboard get its numbers? How did numbers go from about 150 to 70 to 39 in 1 week?
Hey, Mike, I'll try to take that one on, and some others might want to follow behind me. So we are in the COVID dashboard, which is still being tweaked as we speak. We are trying to get information out there that's both understandable and accurate. So last week, those numbers are indicating our active cases. So those students that are in active isolation. So that's why last week it was a little higher than this week. We currently only have 39 students that are actively in isolation.
Anyone else?
So this is Andrew Hsu. Maybe let me put it a slightly different way. So the reason that the numbers are dropping is that all depends on when they become infected and went into isolation. And once they have stayed in isolation for 10 days, they are removed from isolation and dropped from that dashboard. So those numbers are the currently active numbers, and they will change. And our hope is that they will go down continuously.
Thank you, President Hsu. Let's go to the next question here. Are areas where COVID positive students reported being at getting shut down and deeply cleaned?
Mike, I can take this one. It's John Morris again. So the residence halls where we have individuals that are either quarantined or isolated, we are making sure that we deep clean those per CDC and CDC guidelines using EPA approved products.
All right, thank you, John. Let's go to our next question here. Are you concerned that the low number of cases are due to deficiencies in testing or reporting? Talking with other students, it is hard to believe there are only 36 active cases.
Hi, this is Bridget McLaren Sykes from Student Health. I'll take that one again. So right now we are offering testing. We are coordinating testing for all students that are seeking it in the community. And yes, right now we see that there's a bit of a lull. We think that that's probably attributed to the fact that lots of students got tested in the last couple of weeks. And we are following that closely. Next week we have a random testing event planned so that we can capture those students. But we are directing students consistently to testing if they do develop any sort of symptoms. So right now in the Charleston community, we actually are experiencing a little bit of a dip, which we are hopeful will stay that way. And as long as everybody's wearing their masks and doing all the right things, we are hopeful that that will be consistent.
Thank you, Bridget. We're going to get another COVID-19 question coming up in just a second. Let's go to this one. This is nice. Thank you to the entire College of Charleston family. I am so impressed with your level of communication. Move-in was smooth and my son was so happy to be there. May they continue to be safe and enjoy learning. Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's go ahead and go to the next COVID-19 question. Once again, that address is covid19@cfc.edu. My student has 4 classes that were supposed to be hybrid, but the professors have moved them entirely online. Why is this happening? Why can't the college mandate that classes be delivered in the format they were originally advertised during registration?
So I'm happy to respond to that. As I mentioned in one of the previous questions, we have an accommodation process for faculty members who have health-related issues or are caring for family members with health-related issues. And so in order to move a course from an in-person hybrid format to online, faculty members are required to go through the accommodation process for review. So if this has been happening in the instance of this particular student, that's why it's happening.
All right, thank you. Let's go to another question. This one involves the classrooms. My daughter attended her first on-campus class this week. The class had about 18 students and an instructor. One student in the class did not wear a mask. She did have one down around her neck, but never put it on. This made my daughter very uncomfortable. I thought the COVID rule was no mask, no class.
I'm happy to respond to that as well. That is the rule, no mask, no class. I'm not sure what happened in this particular instance. And we can certainly follow up if we have some more information. But one thing that any student can do is that there is a place to report violations of these policies, and there's a link on the Back to the Bricks website, and anyone can go there and report issues related to non-compliance with mask wearing or social distancing. And I would urge your student to do that, but that absolutely is the policy: no mask, no class.
Thank you, Suzanne. Don't go far. We got another one for you here. And the fact that classes are primarily online being taken in consideration by the professors when it comes to grading. In-person learning is what students are most familiar with and the way they perform best.
Great question. And we certainly have been talking, the president and I and others have been talking with faculty members, chairs, deans, urging our faculty members to be as kind and thoughtful as possible this semester with all of our students. And I certainly will continue to urge faculty members to take these unusual and challenging situations into account when it comes to grading or any number of other issues that could come up during the semester.
All right, let's continue. How are RAs handling meet and greets for freshmen to get to know each other in their rooms and dorms, others than short Zoom meetings with rule exceptions?
Hi, Mike. I'll take this one as well. So this year we're working with our RAs on some really individualized plans for students. So the first thing we'll start is they start next week with a round of Cougar chats where they talk with their individual residents to find out what they're interested in, how they're doing. And then they'll take the interests and the information they learn from those meetings, and they'll be creating some small cohorts of students and then connecting them in that way where they can gather maybe in the Stern Center or outdoors in small groups of students around a common interest or a common topic or a common need. So it'll be a pretty individualized process that lets students connect with other small groups of students, and the RAs will be facilitating that starting next week.
Thank you, Alicia. If a student is feeling unwell, how do they go about getting a COVID test on campus?
Hey, I will take that one too. So students who are not feeling well should, number one, I want to direct people to the Back on the Bricks site. Under the Health and Wellness tab, there's exactly this question underneath there, and you can click on there for resources. Secondly, if a student needs to get tested for COVID, we as a college kind of are a little bit of a victim of the supply chain, and we have very limited ability to do testing on campus. But knowing that, we have developed some very robust resources that are just right around the campus. So we have a great partnership with MUSC where we can get students directed to testing at MUSC that's within walking distance of the campus, and then Federal Healthcare, and several other ways to get students tested. So and in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, we are bringing MUSC on campus every other week to do random testing events. So we have a pretty robust testing program in place, but it is in lots of different ways.
All right, thank you, Bridget. We'll take another COVID-19 email coming up after this next one. A very popular question: will there be a spring break for 2021?
I'm happy to answer that. We're looking at that issue right now. We're working on the spring calendar as we speak, and doing the course scheduling for spring. A number of institutions around the country have already announced that they are not having spring break this year because they don't want students leaving campus, going off for a week, and then coming back and importing new microbes to the environment. We have not yet made a decision about that, but I hope that we will be doing so soon.
All right, let's, since we're talking about the future, let's go to our COVID-19 at cfc.edu question. What is the plan for the rescheduled spring commencement that's scheduled for October? And how come parents and families aren't allowed to come?
Hey, Mike, I will start the answer to this, and there may be some others that want to weigh in. We have information from our events director who works with commencement, and hopefully those students that are planning for commencement know that it will be on Friday, October 10th. And based on the number of students that are interested in being on campus, it's about 1,000 students, and per our ordinances for the city, we can have 250 people at a time. So we are making an exception to our campus gathering policy for commencement, but we'll have to be very, very thoughtful about how we do that, spread the students out in the cistern yard. So they will actually have the opportunity to cross the cistern, very similar to how original students cross the cistern. So, but they'll be seated in the cistern yard so they can have the space. And that's why we don't have space for families. We'll certainly be broadcasting all of these virtually because there will be a number of student participants that engage virtually. So families and friends you'll not be limited in the number of people that can watch the virtual celebration. And any of our students that participate in this commencement in October also still have the opportunity, when we're back to our more traditional commencement, to join another commencement for the more traditional experience where they would be allowed to have guests in the cistern yard.
Thank you, Alicia. As a lot of Charlestonians know, we're still in hurricane season, which brings us to our next one. What is the procedure for hurricane evacuation with students who live out of state?
Mike, I will start this one too. I would rather talk about commencement. So it's like any year, we have a series of plans for hurricane evacuation. And any student that needs assistance from the campus evacuating, we have a partnership location where we will take those students. They are set up to manage quarantine and isolation for students who need that, and then also spaces for students who are healthy when we travel. So any student who is not able to make other arrangements or to get home would be able to join us through our process for evacuation.
All right, sticking with that theme of hurricanes, what parent apps do I add to stay connected to the alerts about hurricanes and COVID-19, et cetera? Thanks. I thought Everbridge was only for students and staff, et cetera. Mark, you want to get that?
I'll take that one, Mike. Mark Staples, the Senior Vice President for IT and Chief Information Officer. We had started a process of replacing LiveSafe back with Everbridge for emergency notifications, and because of the COVID pandemic, we shifted gears and reprioritized. So right now, LiveSafe is our current app for all notifications for emergencies and hurricanes. That will be the case up through the end of the fall semester, and then in spring, Everbridge will be the solution. The concern that you expressed on this one, and by the way, I do think I like Alicia talking about graduation and commencement more than we do hurricanes. But when we go back to the Everbridge app, there will be a slightly different methodology for families and friends. You'll be able to sign up for SMS and email. You will not need an app to be able to get notifications for emergencies once we get to the fully Everbridge in the spring semester.
All right, thank you, Mark. Visitation question now. Is there any thought to modifying the dorm room visitation policy that bans anyone from entering another person's room? I think a strict limit on the number of visitors would be more reasonable and just as safe. Right now, a neighbor can't even come into the next room dorm to say hello or borrow an item. I think the complete ban was well intended, but it goes too far. Our kids need to be able to see others and have the same level of interaction, even if it's limited. Please consider this.
Thanks, Mike, and I'll respond to that as well. I certainly hear you, and this was not a policy that we put in place lately. Really, we are hoping we can lessen this up, but we want to monitor how things are going in the hall. We haven't had the halls open for even a week yet. So I would really encourage students to engage in these, our outdoor gatherings in our fitness center, come to the Stern Center, come to some of these other places, and until we can make sure that we can keep the hall safe and that things are going well in there. And then it certainly would be our hope to lessen our approach to several of these policies, and I hope we're able to do that as soon as we're able to.
All right, thank you very much. We'll sprinkle in another COVID-19 question coming up after this one. Why are students forced to have an administrator hearing and not have the option of having a hearing in front of a community of their peers, an honor board, for COVID-19 related charges? What is this justification for this breach in due process?
Sure, Ron. So certainly, I appreciate that question. And due process is meant to be a process to make sure the student has voice, which they certainly do, and even in an administrative hearing. So in partnership with looking at other institutions and then working with our legal affairs partners, we did determine that using administrative hearings is appropriate. And one of the main reasons we did this is because we're able to do them much more quickly and get answers to the students more quickly. Since they're on an interim action before this happens, we want to create resolution for them as quickly as possible.
All right, let's go back to our COVID question. Once again, covid19@cfc.edu. You can use that address to ask any question at any time. I know people on campus who are getting calls about their positive test results, and they're being asked who they were around and where they were hanging out before they became sick or before they knew they were positive. Why are these personal questions being asked? Bridget, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that one. So this is really a very important question and a really important process for us to use in order to prevent the spread of infection on campus. So this goes directly to the question of case investigation and contact tracing. So if we find out that there's a positive case, we will call students, faculty or staff, and ask them where they have been and who they've been in contact with. This is a very confidential process, it's private information. The identity of the person who's positive is always maintained to be private and confidential, but it gives us an opportunity to reach out to other people who've had close contact with this individual and ask them to quarantine, which is to put them into a situation where they can't interact with the public, because at some point they may develop symptoms without, or they may be able to shed the virus without even knowing it. So if we have people in quarantine, it's less likely that they're going to transmit the illness. So being able to really share with us where people have been and who they've been in contact with will really help us to maintain in-person classes and keep the campus environment that we really want to, because we'll be able to sort of close off pockets of the population rather than having to do a big shutdown because we can't identify where the sources are.
Okay, a testing question next. Thank you for an amazing move-in experience, incredible community. On COVID, our son at UMass is tested 2 times per week with over 40,000 tests so far. Will CFC start to drive more testing?
I'll take that one too. Yes, the college is looking for more and more ways to test more efficiently, more inexpensively. And at the moment, there's some of these very large schools that have medical schools and pharmacies that are attached to them have access to technology that is really amazing, and we are learning from those schools. We have the University of South Carolina that has one of those programs, and we are doing everything we can to try to amp it up here on campus, and we will be ready when that's available to us.
All right, great. Let's talk food. Will other food options be opening soon? For example, Einstein Bagels.
Hey, Mike, this is Amy again. Yes, all of our locations are currently open. Our hours of operation are posted on our website, and I added a link in the chat box. The only exception this year is Stern Food Court. We're using that location as a commissary kitchen to prepare meals for students who are in isolation and quarantine, but all other locations are open. We've also added Liberty Fresh Express, which is a grab and go location. It is on the other side, a fresh food company with a private entrance off of Liberty Street, and students can go in there and use a meal swipe to get anything from a sandwich, a salad, pizza, an entree, and like burgers, things from our grill. So there are lots of options that are open and available to students.
Thank you, Amy. Let's go to our next question. My daughter has 3 classes back to back. The first 2 are in person and the last one is not. She does not have enough time to make it back to her apartment because it's only 10 minutes. Where can she take the online class inside, or are there places outside? Maybe there should be more than 10 minutes in between classes for students to get back to their rooms.
Mike, this is John Morris with Facilities. I can start the answer. Maybe Suzanne wants to add to that. I'm pleased to say that our outdoor tents just arrived this week. We had some supply chain issues, but they've been going up the last couple of days, so those tents will have power and sufficient Wi-Fi. We've got indoor Zoom spaces as well, and you can find those on the registrar's website. Provost Austin, you want to add to that?
Nope, I've been very excited to see the tents going up on campus as well, and I do know that all those locations, both inside and outside, are posted online. To the point about having more than 10 minutes in between classes for students to move from one location to another, that's certainly something that we can take a look at.
All right, thank you. Next question here. If the students have to leave class because of COVID, can the students leave their stuff in their dorm rooms?
Hey, Mike, this is Amy again. So the housing contract is valid for the entire academic year. And if a student leaves campus temporarily, they can certainly leave their items in their rooms. We ask them to be mindful of what they leave behind, take anything they're going to need for classes, anything of value, medications, all that stuff with them. But certainly they can leave their items in their residence hall room if they leave temporarily.
Thank you, Amy. I see many people, professors and students, pulling masks down to speak to one another. Does this fly in the face of everything we've been told?
Maybe I'll start with that, and maybe others may jump in. Absolutely. So we definitely don't want to be removing our masks for any reason unless we are alone or in a space where we are very far away from each other outside. So if you do notice that people are doing that and you have an opportunity to report it in the student affairs button that allows us to report violations, we will follow up on it.
Anybody else want to tackle that question too? No? Okay, we'll move on. Next question. My son lives in Craig Hall. It is very hot in his dorm. Are they able to open up the windows and or have a portable AC unit put in?
Hi, Mike, this is John Morris. I would say first, if you're hot, the best thing to do is submit a work request so that our staff can get in there and make sure that the air conditioning system is working properly. And if not, they will help you provide you some portable AC units. In general, here in the Low Country, until the weather kind of cools down a little bit, we do ask people not to leave your windows and doors open, just because we don't want to trade our COVID concern for a mold concern. So first thing to do is submit a work request, and that way our staff can come take a look at the situation.
All right, thank you, John. We're starting to run out of time, but we still got a couple of questions we'll get to. Calculus class has gone online only with video presentations and no student interaction. Math lab appointments are only 15 minutes and tutoring seems limited. What other help is available?
So this is Suzanne. I saw this question earlier, and I've already done some outreach to the dean's office and to the math department. And so we're looking into this. If the student who sent this in wants to send me a note, I can follow up and provide some additional information and resources.
All right, Alicia, this one looks like it's for you. If a student goes to another student's dorm in the same building, are they being fined? What if they want to study and not go to the library?
Sure, I think that's a good question. And we talked a little bit before about our kind of opening of the semester, look at making sure we're getting a good handle and that we can manage the experience in the residence halls and keep students as safe and healthy as possible. So we're not allowing visitation. But anytime there's a possible violation of a residence hall policy, the student has a process with our residence life team, which is a conduct-based process. And typically, those sanctions, if the student's found in violation, are educational in nature. So it depends on the situation and what seems appropriate for the student to create a learning experience through whatever the violation might be. So they're not just automatically being fined or something like that. And I would suggest there are a number of places on campus that are good for studying. So I mentioned earlier the Stern Center. We also have a space in the Education Center. Many of the academic buildings have lobbies or lounges that are set up with social distance for studying, as well as any of the outdoor spaces that John Morris just spoke about as well.
All right, a couple more questions here. Our daughter has been there for almost a week now, and she's disappointed with the lack of food choices. Will it get better?
Hey, Mike, this is Amy again. So we work hard to have a variety of food options available to all students across campus, options that meet all dietary restrictions and preferences, from vegan and vegetarian with allergies. I really encourage your daughter to reach out to our dining services team so that they can consult with her and better understand what she's looking for and try to connect her with different locations and food choices that meet her needs and expectations. I did post our resident district manager's email address in the chat, and he would be happy to work with her directly, or she can just reach out to anyone in dining services.
Okay, and our last question is more of a statement than a question. Thank you for keeping the communication flow going. Great job, CFC. Thank you. And that concludes the Q&A portion of today's event. Before I send it back to President Hsu for some closing remarks, I want to remind our audience that you can stay up to date on all the general College of Charleston news by visiting our university news site. It's the College Today, and you can find it at today.cfc.edu. For details on the college's plan for fall 2020, please visit our Back on the Bricks site. You can find that at go.cfc.edu/bricks. I'll now turn it over to President Hsu for some closing remarks. President Hsu.
Thank you, Mike. I will keep my closing remarks pretty brief. I just want to say again how very proud I am of this campus and how very proud I am of you all. I am a firm believer in that old saying, you are what you do, not what you say you will do. In higher education, I know we say a lot, and as the president of the College of Charleston, I know I say a lot, but I will admit that it's very satisfying to have arrived at this point and to deliver on something that we have worked so hard for and for so long. I know we have not reached our end goal yet, but we continue to make very good progress. And I want to recognize our positive momentum. So thank you for everything that you have done, and thank you for everything that you are doing, and thank you for everything you will do in the days and weeks ahead. By staying vigilant, by following our plans, and by working together, we can and will make this semester a historic success, yet another worthy chapter in our 250-year history. Thank you and have a good evening.